Today, we're going to be looking at how Nintendo destroyed one of its biggest IPs. So Nintendo, it's a company that we all really know about, one of the biggest in the gaming industry, and there's a reason for that. It has made some of the biggest games we've ever seen, and when we have a look at how they're going now, some of these games are still doing absolutely amazingly, while others might be starting to fall off a bit. And to be honest with you, if we look at Pokemon, I'd trust one of their modern games about as much as hopping on one of the new Boeing flights. But the thing is, one of the games that they made, one of their biggest games they ever made, is something that a lot of people might have forgotten about. And that would be the Wii Sports series. And that game was absolutely amazing, and it became one of Nintendo's best-selling games ever. And the thing is, it made absolute sense, being on the new console as its launch game. And you know what? After it did so well, they decided to do one of the best things ever and upgrade the game to Wii Sports Resort. And what do you know? It was an absolute success, just like its predecessor. So when you have this new series absolutely dominating the market, you gotta think to yourself, how could you ruin something that's basically printing you money? Well, the thing is, somehow, in Nintendo's almighty ways, they still managed to do this. And the series started to slowly fall off, and it kind of fell to the shadows. Because if you think about it, people to this day still talk about how great Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort are, but you don't hear people really talking about the other two entries to the series. So here's the thing, today we're here to talk about why Wii Sports and its whole series is now in the gutter. We're here to talk about the collapse of one of Nintendo's biggest IPs, and if you stick around for the video, you're gonna see what actually happened to the Wii Sports series. So how about we get this started and talk about how it all began with Wii Sports. So as I mentioned before, Wii Sports came out with the Wii console on launch, and it was one of the best selling games ever. And the funny thing about this is, Wii Sports was only meant to be a tech demo. It was just showing off the motion controls for the game. And you know what? It did it absolutely amazingly. See, for a game that launched on a Wii console where motion controls were something that were kind of unheard of at the time, this game absolutely demonstrated the future of you being the controller. And to be honest with you, the way they did this by the sports they added was an absolutely genius idea. Some of the most basic sports to play with motion controls, and they absolutely nailed it. And some of the sports they added in were simple. It was tennis, baseball, bowling, golf, and boxing. And these sports were just so much fun to play. Now, if we go and look at tennis, tennis was very simple. Just swing your arm like a tennis racket and hit the ball over. But it also had, if you were going to learn the game, some really cool techniques to play better, like the quick serve and making it more powerful. Just ways that you could actually improve the way you enjoyed the game. But not only that, if you didn't know how to do this stuff, you were still able to keep up with everybody else by just swinging your remote. Baseball. Probably one of the more complicated sports of them all, because you had two different things you had to do. Either you were batting or you were pitching. But realistically, anybody could still pick this up and play it. It was simple and it was fun. And let's be honest, when you got to see that massive out of the park screen, was there really a better feeling when you were playing that sport? Now let's talk about probably the most famous sport in Wii Sports. Now look, if we look at bowling, everyone played bowling. Your grandma played bowling, your dog played bowling. Hell, you could probably go to the local homeless person and he can tell you about a memory of him playing Wii Sports bowling. And the reason was, it was fun, you didn't have to be fast to play it, and it was the most simple of all the sports, and it did it well. From the basic inputs to the fun gameplay, this sport had everything you could want for anyone of any age. And it really brought more than just kids to play Wii Sports. But before I glaze bowling too much, let's move on to golf. Now, golf out of all the sports, in my humble opinion, probably the most lackluster. Honestly, if I'm gonna go and play Wii Sports, I'm not gonna go, hey, let's go play golf. But if I was to go, why not? Let's have a game of golf. You're still gonna have heaps of fun. From trying to get the best trick shots to trying to get holes in one, to trying to not absolutely overpower the bar to give yourself a floppy cock. It did it all and was so much fun to play. Now, the other most famous sport in Wii Sports would be boxing. Now, was boxing the most famous sport because of how it played? No. It's famous for a completely different reason. And that is Matt himself, the absolute GOAT, the absolute champion. But before we kind of get into Matt and just his absolute goated status, we have to look at the sport itself and how the sport played. Now, out of all the sports, this one to me kind of felt the most goofy because you had to include the nunchuck, which was an accessory for the Wii. And the nunchuck itself, it just kind of, well, didn't always feel right when you use it to throw punches. But in saying that, playing boxing itself still felt really good for back when this game released with its limited kind of motion controls. And with the console on launch coming with a nunchuck, it made it so every single sport was playable. Now look, if the game ended with just these 5 sports, the game would have still been absolutely amazing. But they didn't stop here. They also added the fitness and training modes. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, the fitness mode was absolutely hilarious. See, there's nothing more funny than when you hop into the fitness mode and you go, you know what, I'm going to try and get as close to my age as possible by doing all these training games. And then all of a sudden you get rated at 85 years of fitness. Yeah, it hurts after a while when you keep getting those scores. But it gave you a reason to try and improve, and that's half the fun of it. Eventually you're going to get down to those ages where it's like, wow, it's younger than my actual age, and well, then you start to realise it's only a video game, but hey, it's alright, it's fun, right? Yeah, it's fun. But again, with that being limited to be able to do it once a day, you got to think, well, that's kind of sucky, I can only do it once a day. Well, that's where the training modes come in, and you can practice all these fitness modes there. And when we do these training modes, it has 3 different side games for every sport. And I'm not going to lie, every single one of these training games was some sort of fun. Now, yes, there were some that were better than others. Like, let's have a look compared to hitting the wall in tennis compared to dodging balls in boxing. That was an absolute fucking nightmare. But they gave you a reason to continue playing this, and that was the medal system. The better you did, the higher the medal you got. And if you were so good at a certain sports game, you could get a platinum medal. And if any of you watch Professor like I do, you're gonna see how absolutely hilarious it is to watch someone who can't play games try and do these sports games. And yes, I realise I just called them sports games when I should have probably been calling them training games. But you know what? Who cares? Now look, yes, the gameplay was amazing, but it didn't just end there. Let's have a look at the progression system in this game. Now, for a sports game, having a chart there to show your leveling up system is absolutely amazing. And the fact that the more you played certain sports, the closer you got to versing the big bosses of each sport was absolutely amazing. And I don't know about any of you guys, but seeing my bar go up on the chart and seeing my progression from the start of the sport to where I am now is absolutely amazing. And it's just so rewarding to be able to see that. Now, don't get me wrong, when you get to a certain stage and all you see is the bar going up and down when you reach your skill cap, does that suck? A little bit does kind of suck, but hey, it's half the fun of it. But look, at this stage, all I've talked about is playing this game by yourself against the AI. And this game wasn't really designed for that. Yes, they've given you an amazing option for that, but this game really shines when you played with friends or family. And let's be honest, we all have a memory of playing Wii Sports with somebody else. Whether it was at your house or a mate's or family member's house, this game was everywhere. And something that's way more fun than beating AI is beating your best mate in a game of bowling to see who can get closer to that 300 pin score. And look, I don't know if it's just me, but every single time I played one of these sports and I won, my friends did the really cool thing of, oh no, my wrist strap fell off and bang, there goes my TV.
Oh, Mama!
But before I get too far into the absolute pain of replacing TVs every couple of weeks, let's talk about the actual motion controls themselves. Now, the motion controls themselves for this day and age were pretty decent. They weren't terrible, but they were alright, even if they were a tad bit dodgy. Now look, if you go back and watch any sort of old gameplay on the Wii, you'll notice that sometimes the controls don't really look absolutely amazing. And you know what? That's fine. For something like this where you're trying to play a game and you're trying to use old-fashioned motion controls, you got to expect some sort of problems. Whether the controller might be a little bit damaged or it's just bad motion controls in general, the game always felt a little bit off in that department. And for some reason, I don't know why, but the best way to kind of explain it is to just look at tennis, where you see someone absolutely swinging their remote like an absolute retard and they float halfway across the court. Like, I mean, it's funny as anything, but it kind of shows you a little bit of limitations of the actual motion controls themselves. But look, The first game itself was an absolute masterpiece. Even though there wasn't a hell of a lot to do in it, you know, from the start, from only a few limited sports to a few limited mini games as well, everything it did was correct. Everything it did was the right thing to do. It made this game absolutely amazing. And since it launched with every other Wii console that ever came out, everyone got to have the experience to have fun. Yes, did this inflate its sales? 100%. But I think it was worth it because there were lots of games on the Wii that didn't actually use the motion controls like this. And some games that did use motion controls were nowhere near as fun as this game. But it would all take a dark turn. And if you stick around, you're going to see how bad this series actually got. But before we can look at how bad it really got, we have to see the massive upgrade that this series made. And that was going to be in its next title, Wii Sports Resort. So, how do you improve one of the best-selling games ever? And this here is the answer to that. Now look, if you just look purely on sales numbers alone, you don't get the full answer to this. Because Wii Sports is one of the best-selling games ever. And in that list, there's only a few games above it, with one of those being Tetris. So if you think that you're going to be selling more copies than that, especially when Wii Sports came with the Wii system itself, you're never going to be able to achieve that. But what they did achieve was still extreme commercial success with this game. And the reason for that is because the game was a massive improvement. And let's start off by talking about all the new sports themselves. So compared to Wii Sports, we had the basic 5 sports. And in this new game, we had something like 12 different sports. And yes, there were a few returners like bowling and golf, but we had so many new sports like basketball. We had a bunch of different water sports. We had cycling. We had plane flying. And if you enjoyed some of the old sports that weren't there, they had things to replace those, like table tennis for tennis. They had sword play for boxing, and they really didn't have much to replace baseball. But I mean, hey, if you wanted to, you could play frisbee. Now, I know with just Wii Sports, it was like a tech demo, but when Wii Sports Resort came out, do you know what you do when you first load that game for the first time? You have to parachute out of a plane to land on Woohoo Island. And yes, parachuting would be one of the sports you could do, but it's just an amazing way to start your experience in this game. Now, one of the biggest selling points when it came to Wii Sports Resort, it wasn't just the upgrades and all the extra new sports they had, it was the new Wii Motion Plus that was inside your new Wii condom that you got inside the game. Now, what the Wii Motion Plus was supposed to do is basically make all your motion control problems you had in Wii Sports gone. It was going to make the game just much more smooth and much more better to play. And we will get into that. But before we talk about the Motion Plus, let's talk about the actual gameplay itself and all the different games. So, similar to Wii Sports, we had our main modes, but instead of having all like the different training games, you had side modes inside each one of these games. Now, if we're going to talk about these modes themselves, one of the easiest ones to talk about is probably table tennis, and the next mode underneath it was the one where you had to aim to hit cans. These modes were absolutely awesome. I realistically can't think of one that was super unfun to play. Yes, there were some that were better than others, and if you talk to anybody, they're going to have different lists on which sport they enjoy the most. But I feel like some of the best ones you had were the swordplay showdown where you got to go and fight a massive horde of people. Again, your table tennis hitting cans, your basketball one where you got to throw for all the hoops and see if you can get all the scores in as quickly as possible. And, of course, flying the plane around Woohoo Island. Now, I don't know if you've actually flown the plane around Woohoo Island, but that is one of the best experiences that you can have on this game. Trying to get every single little point that you can get by finding all the secret spots was absolutely amazing. And let's be honest, how many of us tried to fly in and out of that volcano, and every single time we touched it and got shot out of that plane like it was the Hindenburg disaster? Poof. Now, other upgrades they made to this game compared to Wii Sports was the stamp system. Now, I personally feel like the stamp system is a much better system than the medal one. And the reason for that is you don't just have to be playing training games to accomplish this. A lot of these stamps were things you would do in the main sport itself. Now, some of these stamps include being the big bosses or getting certain high scores. But compared to there just being one major medal that you got for each training game, there were 5 stamps per game mode. And this was awesome because you had different stamps for table tennis, bowling, golf, and everything in between, which meant there was so much more replayability in this game, not only just in the sports, but all the challenges that you could do as well. Now, if we look at the game itself, one of the biggest things you will notice is all the bright colours. Yes, Wii Sport had bright colours, but the actual vibe and setting of this game was absolutely amazing. The whole game was based around being on a resort on this island, and they nailed the vibe of this absolutely amazingly. This game's setting just felt beautiful, and the colours of it, absolutely outstanding. For such an old game, it is still so vibrant and so full of life that realistically, why would I ever want to go outside, especially in winter when everything's just fucking depressing? I can just go back to Woohoo Island and enjoy my table tennis. Now, let's talk about the Motion Plus. So, when you got the game, it would come with what I'm just going to call the Wii Remote Condom, that thing that no one ever used. The issue was, you had to use it to play this game. With the original Wii Remotes, they didn't have this Motion Plus, so you had to plug this thing into the back that was supposedly going to help all the games play and feel way better. And if you were someone with small hands, which wasn't a problem for me with my giant fucking meaty claws, this could be an issue because this added quite a bit of extra length to the Wii Remote. Now look, I am nitpicking here, but the thing is, it did kind of suck that you had to add this extra thing to your remote, making it realistically more uncomfortable. And what I would say would be one of the biggest problems is if you managed to damage this or lose this, you actually couldn't play the game. You need this Motion Plus to even play Wii Sports Resort. And let's just say you lost the controller, you could actually buy a controller with it built in, which seemed like the reasonable upgrade to get. But I don't know about you, I'm not the biggest person on having to buy a special controller just to play a game on a console I've owned already for however long. Now, the other thing I will mention is I don't mind paying extra money if it's for a decent reason. I'm not big into battle passes or any of those cosmetic things that don't actually do anything, especially for games like Fortnite or other things where it's kind of a shit game and just doesn't really help you out by buying all these things. When it comes to Wii Sports Resort, on the other hand, buying a new controller with an actual added upgrade for not a hell of much different price, yes, of course it's going to be a little bit more, but it did make a difference. When you played these games, it actually added a lot more feel to them. And one of the biggest ones that I can kind of mention in the easiest way is golf. So if you played golf and you swung your stick in a funny way, your golf club, I should be saying, stick, Jesus Christ, Aaron, like really? You're gonna be telling all these lovely viewers it's a stick. Fuck, this is why no one watches your videos anymore. But the thing is, it's not just the way you swung your club. If you twisted your Wii Remote in the action of it, it would just floppy cock it without even having to red bar it. And this added a whole new way to play. Now yes, if you like me and you're shit at it, it's going to make the game way harder. But it actually does show that this Wii Motion Plus is really helping out with the way the controls work. And it wasn't just golf, this was in every sport in the game. It's just easy to kind of look at golf because you get the bar that you can judge. It was in bowling as well. And you can notice it by how much more the ball will spin just on normal throws compared to how it used to in Wii Sports. And here's the thing, yes, in the end of the day, I am not the biggest person for saying, hey, go out there and buy a special controller just to play a certain game. If you want to, of course you can, but in this situation, the Wiimotes with the, Motion Plus inside, they just became the stock standard. These things just were everywhere. It ended up replacing all Wii remotes, so it became a thing of, well, if I lose my Wii remote, why not just get the Wii Motion Plus one instead? It's not going to matter. Most games that would come out, which you will see in the future, required these Wii Motion Plus. And since it wasn't a massive price difference, it just kind of seemed like the natural upgrade that everyone should really go through. Now look, looking back at Wii Sports Resort, the game was absolutely amazing. It did so many things right, and if I was going to talk about it, I'd be here for ages. It was what everything should have been up to this point. And the thing is, once you do this so well, it feels like you can't make a mistake going forward. But the thing is, they did. The games after this took a turn for the worse. And it would be a massive shock in how bad these games would actually get. And you know what? It started with the next addition to the series, Wii Sports Club. Now, when it comes to Wii Sports Club, it had a major problem before the game even came out, and that was the fact that it was on the Wii U. Now, the Wii U is a console that many of you might not even remember because it really flopped, and most people didn't even buy this console, so it makes it hard for any game to succeed already when it's limited to just this console alone. But look, that's not a good enough excuse to explain why this game flopped, because there were games on the Wii U that still did really well. So there has to be another reason, and this reason is so easy to find as soon as you look at the game. Now, unlike Wii Sports, the game didn't release with the console, so that's already going to hinder against its sales straight away. But again, as we spoke about before, we can't just focus on the sales, we have to look at the game itself. Now, looking at Wii Sports Club, it only released with 2 sports. Now, when you think about that, you've just had Wii Sports Resort, so this game should be a money glitch. But you release the game with less sports than Wii Sports Resort, but not only that, less sports than the original Wii Sports itself. How are you going to expect something like this to succeed? Well, the way they started its launch was as an online Nintendo eShop sale, and the game itself was free. That sounds like a pretty good start. Having a free game and then maybe only 2 sports, that sounds alright. Until you realise how they're going to make money off this game. So, they released the game with 2 sports, and here's the thing. Most people, when this game released with 2 sports, thought to themselves, at least they'll never go and do this again, or hopefully they never do this again. And we'll get to that as well, but the thing is, even though it only released with 2 sports, they made you pay to play these sports. And it wasn't just a, hey, here's the game for free, now you gotta buy the sports. They said you had to basically get a pass to play the sport for 24 hours. This is a fucking shitstir. Why the fuck would I get a free game if I have to pay to play the sport for 24 hours and then buy another membership? Yes, it's only $2, but it's $2 too much. Something like this shouldn't have to cost you money. Now look, I understand if you charge people to buy the game. That's completely fine. Buying a game is how transactions are done. But buying a fucking pass to only be able to play the game for 24 hours is ridiculous. And the fact that it wasn't just the whole game, it was per sport. You paid to have a sport unlocked for 24 hours, not the whole game. Now look, here's the thing. This strategy was absolutely shocking, okay? There is nothing I can say to defend this because it is blatantly shit. Like, EA has better marketing strategies than this. And fuck, if I can say EA has better marketing strategies, you know you fucked up really bad. But eventually, once they released all the sports, they would release a physical copy of the game, where if you bought this physical copy, all the sports were unlocked permanently, no more passes or no more bullshit like that. Which, look, that is a correct step and a step in the right direction to normal gaming. But the issue was, people were so confused by this because of the launch of this game being on the eShop and how you had to pay for passes, that people didn't really want to buy a physical copy of this game. And I can completely understand, it was confusing. There was no guarantee at the start that you even knew what you were buying. Now look, if you did buy it, of course, great. But again, when you're confusing your player base like this, of course it's going to be another thing that makes your game flop. Now look, let's put all that into the past, all these awful fuck-ups they've already made, and let's actually get into the game itself and let's look at it. So, Wii Sports Club. What's the premise of it? Well, basically a remaster of Wii Sports, but it has online connectivity. And one of the things they really pushed for was the clubs feature, where you, depending on where you lived, was a club, and you could go and verse other people from around the world, and mainly America from what I can see, and see all the clubs and be the best club out there. Now look, something like this sounds absolutely awesome, but there was a big problem. First of all, not a lot of people got this game, which really sucked. Second of all, it didn't matter how good you were at this game, if where you lived people were not playing this game, or if people were just bad from where you lived, the club system was absolutely terrible and it couldn't help you out at all, because you'd always be at the bottom no matter how good you are. You cannot push a whole state's worth of players with just one person. Now don't get me wrong, the idea behind it is really cool. I love the idea. Having these clan systems and these big team things is such a fun idea. but it was just implemented so horribly. So now that we're getting out of the club system, we've mentioned that it was a remake of the original Wii Sports. Okay, that's completely fine. Games get remade all the time. But the issue is when you remake a game, you're supposed to make it better. And let's be honest here, if it's in this part of the video, you know they did not make this shit any fucking better. So since they didn't make the game better, let's have a look at the sports. So if we start off with tennis, it's very similar to the way the original tennis looked and played. Now they've added a bit more detail into it and the court looks a bit more dirty, but the colour's completely gone. Yes, they actually have proper Mii's this time in the sidebars, like where they're standing to watch the sports, but it just doesn't look nearly as good. But I will say, the actual tennis game itself is probably a small improvement because they added features to the game like the smash of like a wobbly ball. And yes, this is a feature that came from table tennis in Wii Sports Resort, but it is just a nice quality of life change into tennis itself. And when we look at something like bowling, it's very similar and plays basically the same. Again, there is nothing wrong with this. Bowling is one of those things where you can't really improve it much, but it's also going to be very hard to stuff it up unless you really try. And they even kept the feature in where if you bowl it backwards, all the Mii's get all scared and shocked. So the little Easter eggs like that are still in there and it's awesome. But here's the thing. They were the first two sports that came with the game. When we start looking at the other sports, that's when we start to get problems. So let's look at golf. So when golf come in, they had this really cool feature where you had to also use the gamepad to play. And what you would do is you'd basically have the gamepad on the floor and that's where the golf ball would be. And you would swing your remote to basically hit it from the gamepad. And this feature is really cool. The only issue is it's really difficult to kind of concentrate on both the TV screen and the fucking gamepad. Because here's the thing. Every Wii Sports game so far, you can see your power bar on a TV. The issue with this one is they only had the power bar on the gamepad. So if you were trying to do practice swings and see how they go on a TV, you had to look at the tiny little screen on the gamepad, which is hard to concentrate on in the first place to see your power bar. And the only time it would pop up on the normal TV is after you've already hit the ball. And by that stage, if you fucked up, it's way too late. So alright, we've already struck out on golf, but again, golf's one of those sports where I feel like you can strike out. It's not the worst thing in the world. So next one we're going to be looking at now is baseball. And baseball also uses the gamepad. And out of the 4 sports we've looked at so far, it's one of the only 2 sports that use the gamepad. So why did you even include it if it's only going to be in 2 sports? Look, you know what, no matter, let's see if it's a good use in this case. So baseball itself, it's the same as how you'd normally play it. You got your Wii remote, you swing to bat. But when you're pitching, it's all on the gamepad. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a cool idea so you can have your little screen so they can't really see what you're doing. And I will give them props here. One of the coolest things they've done here is you actually have to aim the gamepad up at the sky around the room just to catch the ball. So now catching wasn't just an AI luck thing. You can actually control if you catch the ball now. So look, realistically, I'm going to give baseball a bit of a pass on this. So out of all the sports, we have one kind of letdown, one that's alright, and 2 that have done pretty well, even though one's only really had a major upgrade. But in saying that, this isn't so bad at the moment. It just seems like it's kind of in the middle, until you get to boxing. Now, when you look at boxing, they kind of changed the whole thing altogether. The whole thing just looks bland, it looks boring, and they changed it from using a Wiimote and a nunchuck to 2 Wiimotes. Now, I'm not going to be the one to have to explain this to you, but Wiimotes are way more expensive than nunchucks. And yeah, if you don't have a second Wiimote, too bad, so sad, you cannot play boxing. So there's a massive financial expense that you're going to have to go through to get a second Wii U Wiimote. Now, you'd think to yourself, well, this is going to make your inputs way better. The Wiimote was way more responsive than the nunchuck, and you're like, yeah, fair enough, that's a point to have. But the thing is, the sport itself in this game sucked so much balls that what was the point of even playing it? If you compare Wii Sports Boxing to Wii Sports Club Boxing, there is a massive difference in how good it is. In Wii Sports Boxing, everything felt so amazing, the play so smooth, had these really cool timing things where it's slow mode when you dodge stuff. This has nothing, it's clunky, it just feels like shit. Every single time you throw a punch, your character has to stand still. And look, they actually added a new feature to this where you'd get dazed if you got hit so many times. But the issue is, unlike tennis, where you get that cool smash thing, this is not a fun mechanic, because if you daze your opponent, it just feels cheap. And if you get dazed, it feels cheap when you get absolutely smashed around, you cannot defend yourself. Why would anybody want to feature in a game like boxing where, oh, I've been hit a few too many times, I now can't do anything, so just smack me in the face as much as you can. And look, they did bring something back from Wii Sports Resort as well. They brought the stamp system back. The issue is, why would you care about the stamp system when the game just isn't that fun to play? Like, I would rather go back to Wii Sports Resort and try and grind all those stamps than have to play Wii Sports Club just to get a few stamps on that game. Now look, some things changed and other things also changed that weren't too big of a deal. One of these things was most likely the level up system for most of you. Now, they changed the graphing to just a level up bar. And look, here's the thing. Am I a fan of this? No. But at least there was still some progression that you could work towards in this game, which is absolutely amazing. And you know what? Hopefully for the foreseeable future they wouldn't take this away now, would they? Now look, we've also mentioned that this game had the online connectivity to play online. This was the first Wii Sports game that you could do this in, and honestly, the online stuff was kind of mid at best. Like, bowling was fun and all that, but if you had to play something like boxing, there was a lot of lag. And the issue is, because of all the confusion of this game, it was quite hard to actually find online games of this. So if you wanted to play an online game, you basically needed somebody who had the game already and was willing to play it with you. But look, having online connection is a great step for the series. I'm not just going to completely shit talk that even if it did fail. Because look, the future of gaming from this stage was becoming online gaming. So bringing again one of the biggest IPs that Nintendo had to the online scene is absolutely amazing. Now look, we've spoken about Wii Sports Club and how it really was probably one of the biggest flops they had on this console, besides the console itself. Look, you went through all these things, all these sports, and you had to pay money just to play them. They didn't all release at once, and it was really just a massive shit show from the start. The club system didn't work, and people didn't play this game, which really hindered its online connectivity. But look, you'd have to think by this stage, could it get any worse? And the answer is yes. How can you get worse from Wii Sports Club? Well, you're at the point of the video where we're going to get to that now. Ah yes, we're finally here, Switch Sports. And may I say, this series is taking the same trends that Call of Duty is, especially after you see what the Black Ops 7 campaign looks like. Now look, Switch Sports is the final game so far that we have in this series, and it was the one bringing it to the more modern console. And for it to be on the Switch, this is huge because it had been so many years since we'd had another Nintendo sports game like this. Now, when the game released, there was actually quite a lot of hype behind it because it looked like it was really, really well done. And the game started off with 6 sports, which from Wii Sports is more, and including Wii Sports Club, we have an extra sport here. Now, one thing they did do was they did the cardinal sin of Wii Sports Club and didn't actually release the full game properly and had to add more sports later on. And I can tell you this right now, if you had the game on launch, these sports took so long to release. And to get the final one, it took almost 2 years. If not, it might have actually been over. I can't actually remember, but it was so fucking long. Now look, when you play the Wii versions of these games, you can understand the motion controls. The whole Wii remote was designed for motion controls. Now, when it comes to the Switch Joy-Cons, I don't understand properly how the motion controls work in that, and it's clear to see that it is nowhere as good as the Wiimotes. And you might be thinking like, well, what do you mean? It's a more modern console. Shouldn't everything just be getting better? Well, that's what I thought until I actually started playing the sports. So if we have a quick look at the sports, let's have a look at badminton to start off with. So playing badminton, if you're trying to use the motion controls there, it is literally just swinging. Yeah, and now they did this in tennis, but this is ridiculously bad. It doesn't really matter what you do, you're always gonna hit the, whatever the fuck it's called, the badminton thingy, the shuttlecock, that's it, the shuttlecock. Yes, see, I know my sports, but it's absolutely shocking. It is just really basic and easy. Now I know this is a kid's game, but it's not even a challenge to even hit this thing. Now, if we go and look at something like tennis, there's a little bit more involved in it, but still, it just feels bland and boring, and really, it just doesn't feel proper when you're hitting anything. Now, if we're gonna have a look at bowling, I just want to talk about how this sport actually feels pretty good. Compared to the other sports, they kind of feel a bit shit, but bowling, it's really hard to fuck up. Bowling is one of those sports where it is so simple to actually make a mistake here would be challenging. But they did remove the throwing it back feature to make all the Mii's jump. Now, if we have a look at the new sword fighting one, that one is just a bit out there. So here's the thing. We go from sports being extremely simple, like tennis and badminton, to sports being almost hard to play because the controls feel shit. Now, when you're doing the sword play one, the whole thing they have is you got to turn the controller the opposite of what your opponent's swinging. Fair enough, that is not a bad design. But the thing is, sometimes, I don't know what it is, you try and twist your Joy-Con and it doesn't seem to twist the direction that you want it to be in. Now, when it comes to the Wiimotes and the other games, I never really had this problem. But for some reason, just the motion controls on the Switch Joy-Cons just feel terrible in this game. And a similar thing can be said to volleyball. When volleyball comes out, yes, it is very simple motions where you just got to swing, but it's actually one of the more difficult sports because it is so complicated. Now look, for me myself, it's my favorite sport to play in the game, but it doesn't excuse the way the controls feel when you're playing this. It still just feels clunky and dodgy to play. But from the 6 original ones, I've left out the worst for last, and that has to be soccer. And soccer is one of the worst games you can play on this. Not because the controls are just bad, but the game itself is so boring. They put you on this big field with 4 people, and it's basically a glorified version of Rocket League. And sometimes you'll play these games, and it literally just ends scoreless because it is so boring and shit to play. Every single time you play this, it just feels like you're chasing a massive soccer ball around the field. It's not fun. If anything, it is the most boring shit you can do on this game. Now, they did another thing with soccer, and that's the penalty shootout mode. And I just wanted to make a quick mention of this, because to play this, they want you to use a leg strap that comes with the game. Now look, the idea of this is absolutely phenomenal. I think this is so cool. You know, so you don't have to just use your hands to swing around. But the thing is, it's the only sport in the entire game you use your leg, and they give you this shitty little leg strap. Now look, I know I'm an adult talking about this game, and it's meant for kids. So for a kid, this leg strap's gonna be fine. But look, I'm a male who goes to the gym and does his leg day quite often. So I have a big leg. This thing does not fit around my leg. And it is the most uncomfortable thing ever. So if I want to play this stupid penalty shootout mode, I gotta either strap it to my calf, or I gotta play with my hand, which takes all the fun out of the mode. So talking about the game modes in this, when we look back at Wii Sports Resort, every sport had multiple game modes. This game, on the other hand, does not. Very few sports really have other game modes, and the ones that come to mind are, of course, soccer, as we just spoke about, bowling has its special funny bowling lanes, and like basketball when it added in later. See, the lack of these other game modes just makes the game feel so unpolished. And talking about late releases and the game not being complete, when they finally added in golf and basketball, these sports just came in way too late for it to be any sort of reason to come back. And let's be honest, who realistically is coming back for golf? Now, when it comes to basketball, the game itself is kind of fun. But again, it suffers from that thing of it's way too simple because the motion controls kind of just feel bad. You can literally just flick your hand up in the air and you seem to score basically every single time if you don't get contested. Unless you're trying to shoot from halfway. But that's the issue. It shouldn't be that easy. If you go back to Wii Sports Resort and you play basketball, you could miss from right in front if you flicked it the wrong way. Now look, the game is already suffering, and it's on the new modern console, which is just the weirdest fucking thing, how they're just absolutely destroying newer versions of these games. But hey, at least they wouldn't touch the characters you play with. Oh wait, they did. So one of the biggest things I didn't mention in the last 3 games is the characters you play as, and that's your Miis. And the Miis are something that absolutely make the Wii Sports series. They're these cool characters that you get to create that run around your Wii consoles. And you get to make one for your Switch as well. So it only makes sense that we get to use our Mii characters. And before anyone gets to shits with me, you can use your Mii character, but they punish you for using your Mii characters in this and not their new fancy characters they've put in. And you're probably thinking, well, what do you mean? How do they punish you for using your Mii character? That doesn't sound right. Well, the reason they do that is through their new Lucky Dip system. So what I say about this Lucky Dip system is basically When you play, you get this spin and you can unlock new rewards or items to your characters. Now, if you use one of their new fancy characters that they have, you can unlock everything and use everything at will. But if you decide to use your Mii character, some of these customization options will not work. They physically will not work. Now, it's usually headgears, but they're usually the best things you want, the headgears and the outfits. So, what's the point of using your Mii character or using these lucky dip systems or these wheel spins to get the items that you want when you don't know if you can even use it because of the character you're playing as? Honestly, to me, it feels like a way of getting rid of the old Mii characters, which I love. I think they're an amazing part of this series' history, and it really does make me sad. Now look, before I rave on about that too much, because I know people probably don't care a lot about the Miis, let's talk about the leveling up system. And fuck, this is one of the worst things ever. The leveling up system in this has just crashed and burned. So here's the thing, if you want a leveling up system in Switch Sports, well, unfortunately for you, it's completely gone. The thing they have now is just a difficulty setting. You can change it from easy, medium, or hard, or something along those lines. And yes, I do know there's an Easter egg to get the old Mii characters back from the original Wii Sports to play as the hardest characters, but still, there's just no real progression system, which really takes a lot out of this game, and honestly, it's quite sad. It really just makes this game feel so incomplete and just no fun. But look, I don't want to shit on this game completely because it does bring back the online features. And playing online on this game is way better than on the Wii U with Wii Sports Club. And look, I have had heaps of good memories playing this game online and just playing with friends, because it does nail that whole party game-esque feeling. The only sucky thing is, if you have no one to play with, the game really isn't worth getting. And if you're not going to play online, then honestly, it's one of those games you really should just skip over. It does just offer nothing. The short amount of content in this game, you'll be done with it within an hour or two. And there's no real reason to come back. Look, when it comes to Switch Sports, yes, it is a massive downgrade from what the series was. There is no real reason to play it unless you're playing with friends or online. And with everything they've changed in it, it all seems to be sloppy and negligent. Everything in this game just feels like a cheap cop-out from what the original games offered to you. And it really is upsetting because Switch Sports really could have re-brought back the series back to its great heights. But again, it just feels like a cheap cash grab. And look, again, if you're just playing this game with friends, or you're playing it with family, or you're going to play online to have a bit of a laugh, this game will serve that purpose. It's not going to be the end all or the greatest game ever, but you can have fun on it. And it is a goofy laugh, and I have had those moments. But I just wish that they would have actually put a bit of effort into the game and made it fun for everyone, even the people who might not be able to play online or play with friends all the time. Switch Sports and Wii Sports Club really were the massive downfall to the Wii Sports series. Now look, Nintendo again has made some absolute classic games, and the Wii Sports games are up there with it, especially when we look at Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort. Those games are absolute cult classics and will be remembered forever. Those games really changed the way we looked at playing games in motion control. They paved a way so other games could walk through. But yet, unfortunately, Nintendo could not keep pushing good content for these games. They ended up dropping the ball with Wii Sports Club and Switch Sports. And unfortunately, it really has put a negative impact on the series itself. But look, it doesn't have to necessarily be over. They can still fix these. Now look, how could they fix these? Well, that's easy. First of all, kind of fix up your motion controls. Make them feel more responsive back like they used to be. Don't make them these shitty Switch ones, or if you're gonna do it, at least add more into the Switch Joy-Cons so they play better. We just had the Switch 2 come out recently, so there's no reason why they couldn't, add something to them or make a new Joy-Con like they do with the Wii. I know it's extra money, but it would be nice to see a bit more support for the motion controls for games like this. The other things they could do is add more sports, or at least have the full game on release so we're not waiting for content almost 2 years after the game comes out. And finally, actually add decent game modes as well. Do what Wii Sports Resort did. Don't just have baseline boring games and then nothing else. Have fun game modes and then have fun side game modes you can do as well. Bring back the fitness mode, bring back training modes and all that. Actually have all these extra things you can do just to have fun. Again, it's not meant to be a serious game. I understand that, they're for kids. But come on, kids deserve to have fun too with these types of games. And let's be honest, most people playing these Wii Sports games now are usually adults. And look, I think a thing that a lot of people are going to be asking for, Switch Sports, it's still kind of in the media market. It's not the newest thing out there, but people might still be intrigued to see what happened or if it's even worth getting. Look, again, if you're going to sit there and just have fun with the boys or have a family game out there, then Switch Sports will probably do it for you. It's going to be alright. But look, realistically, if you have a bit of a tight schedule with your money and all that, just miss out on this one. Just go back to the Wii, play Wii Sports. You're going to have way more fun doing that than you are going to be playing Switch Sports. Well, you know what? I think that's it for this one. And you know what I got to say? If you stuck around this long, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, like the video, and hey, go check out the Discord down below. It will help us out. And you know what? If you enjoy videos like this, go check out our last video where we talk about more games and how amazing they can be.